Ms. Marvel is the newest of the Marvel Disney Plus shows that just got released. It just got done with its third episode, and I read that there's only going to be 6 episodes in total this season. So the season is halfway done, and I have to say, it's been kind of wild so far. Now, I wasn't exactly planning on watching this show, at least not so soon. I literally watched it the day it came out because it was recommended to me the same time that I got done watching a Kenobi episode. So I figured I'd give it a shot because, the extent I knew about the Ms. Marvel character was from the Avengers game that came out a couple years ago, and it wasn't really great. So I wasn't really exactly excited for the show. Especially because the show isn't exactly appealing to me. I'm in my 20s. I don't think this show is appealing to a 21-year-old, 14, 15 at most. But I figured I'd give it a chance, and I watched the first episode. Before I did go into the show, I did know some things about it. I do remember watching some trailers for it, whether it be on YouTube or on TV somewhere. But I did know that they did change her powers a little bit by giving her this bracelet that's able to give her Green Lantern type powers. Because in the game, I remember that she was able to stretch her arms. She was like Mr. Fantastic in a way. But for this show, apparently they wanted to not make him or her like Mr. Fantastic. So they gave her this bracelet that pretty much just turns him into the Green Lantern. And I wasn't really psyched about that because I thought that the powers for Ms. Marvel were very specific for Kamala, the character in the game. She didn't fit in very well, so she ended up getting these powers that definitely didn't help, but she made it cool in her own way. So I thought it was a very odd choice for them to change the power by pretty much just making her a infinity gauntlet almost, so she's able to create her own things. So I just thought that was kind of weird. Especially because, like I said, it does seem like an infinity gauntlet, which we just got done with, and now we also have the 10 rings that are around there, and it also just seems like a Green Lantern ring. So it seems very weird that it almost seems like they're trying to get away from the Mr. Fantastic powers by giving her this gauntlet thing, but it also just seems very familiar because we just got done with a bunch of movies that involved objects that give you powers. So I wasn't really too excited for the change, but it is what it is, and so I ended up watching the first episode, and it wasn't too bad, I guess. Like I said, my expectations were pretty low, but it was shot very cool, and the editing wasn't that bad either. It seemed like the director was trying to almost get similarities from Edgar Wright's movies like Baby Driver, where objects will be on the wall that are similar to what they're doing, or will be on a sign in a window will show what they're talking about, or they're also comic book bubbles, like what we're seeing in the Spider-Verse animated movie. It's just very similar, and the editing wasn't too bad at all. Not only is it not too bad, it's actually pretty good in a lot of the scenes that they use it in, and I was pretty excited to see how they would use it in the rest of the series. And I was also really happy with the casting in the show so far. I think that Kamala's casting was pretty well done, and I think her family is really well casted too. I think the whole family has really good chemistry together, and their dramatic scenes with the dialogue is really well done, and I was actually really happy to see that. Overall, I think the first episode is pretty well done. I think most of it was just an introduction to Kamala, who she is, who her family is, and who the people around here, how their relation is to Kamala. And I think we do see a slight glimpse into Kamala's powers, which, like I said earlier, I don't really like the change because it's kind of if anything, more like Green Lantern's powers, where she's able to just make things with her mind and they kind of just break when she's not focusing hard enough, which is pretty much the power of Green Lantern. And then when you start breaking down her abilities, because she's able to make these floating foot things where she's able to run into the air using these platforms she's able to make, but it's does it stop? Can she make wings if she wanted to? Can she make a whole house out of this power? I don't really understand it that well. I kind of wish that they stuck to the original power that she had, but it is what it is. And after the first episode, I was still pretty intrigued of where the rest of the episodes would go. Then the second episode is still kind of just an extension of the first one with introduction. Less now on the people and more now just between Kamala trying to figure out her power and how she's going to use it to help people, which I think is a decent montage. They kind of ditched the whole editing from the first episode with the whole Edgar Wright editing style, which I was kind of disappointed on. I was hoping that they would kind of stick with it more to make it more, I don't know, interesting just looking, but it wasn't really like that. But the episode is mostly just her messing around with her powers until she gets to the point where she does have to save someone with it, and it doesn't exactly go the way she planned, and then she has to start running from the police, and then she gets picked up into a car by her friend. Now, like I said earlier, I'm obviously not the target demographic for this show, but that being said, the show should still be entertaining to some bit, and I was pretty disappointed with the second episode of the series so far. I think it was kind of boring in a lot of parts, and also it got a lot more cheesy, I feel like, and a lot more less realistic, and it just didn't really work this episode. It didn't really work for me a lot of the time. And when I say less realistic, I don't necessarily mean like people being able to do things they shouldn't. I mean, that's the whole point of these shows, is they're superheroes. I mean more like dialogue. The dialogue is a lot more cheesy and a lot less what people would actually say in real life. That was like the cheesy part and most unrealistic part for me, is actually like the dialogue itself. Like, I don't think these people would be saying these certain things in these situations, but getting past that, I think the show's still fine up to this point. The second episode's definitely not as great, and I was still, though, excited to see where they're going to plan going, especially because at this point we don't have a villain yet, and I was kind of expecting there to be a villain in the show, or else it would just be kind of like a worthless show. So I'm still excited to see where they're going to be going next. But now on to the third episode. It picks up right after the second one, where Kamala was kind of doing her first heroic act and kind of failed. So she ended up getting chased by the police to hide her identity, where she gets picked up like on the road by her new friend, who isn't exactly who she thought he was. And this is the point of the series so far, where the show starts getting kind of wacky. Like, you figure out that her friend, who's like her new friend, is related to this group of people who are able to like not age, and they have these immense amount of power because they're from a different dimension, and their whole goal is to use the gauntlet that Kamala uses for her powers, to use it to bring them back home. But they can't, because Kamala's like afraid, because her research shows that if she tries doing this, something dangerous could happen. So then they turn on Kamala, but it's like super weird at this point, and the show kind of lost me at this point. But I'm still in because it just got really goofy. And the goofiness is coming from these new villains, these group of people from another dimension that are now stuck. It's super weird the way they're doing it so far. And now they've got like these weapons that like this guy has it like hidden as his belt, and he takes off his belt and uses it as a whip. And like her friend's weapon is like a little keychain that has a ball on the end of it, and he starts swinging it around the air. It's just super weird the way they're doing it, and it like came right out of nowhere. And the acting is super weird too, and it's like they're trying to direct it as in like it's serious, but the whole show before this was super cheesy and not supposed to be taken serious, and it just like ended up really weird. But I'm all in for it. But even at this point, the show still isn't even bad. Like, there's still a lot of good things that happened in the third episode. Like, my favorite part of the whole series so far is the family dynamic. I think that the casting for the family is really good, and it's also really well directed too. There's a shot in this third episode where the brother of Kamala is getting married, and he's having like this midlife, like right before a wedding, kind of like having a nervous kind of breakdown to his dad by saying he's like, I only have $700 left in my bank account, and his dad's kind of just like listening to him. And this is like taking place in like a church type thing, but the whole thing is like really well shot, and like the camera is just really good in this series so far. I don't know why it's so good. It just looks really well, and the whole cast for the family has really good chemistry, and I really like the dialogue scenes. There's a scene in the third episode too where Kamala's kind of having a similar moment as her brother, but with like her powers, but she's talking to her mom saying like, is it all worth it? While her mom's like cleaning a wound on her knee, and it was a really well done scene. And I think the mom and the dad, specifically for Kamala, are super well, like really good actors, and they're really emotional. They seem so real. They really seem like they could be this actress's mom and dad. And I think the scenes are just really well done. And the score, there's a few moments of this third episode where the score is actually really well done too. Like one of the really serious parts where Kamala's getting chased by these bad guys in a kitchen, these lights turn off, and then these strings, like there's like the slight string that's like a horror aspect to it. Actually sounds really cool, and I actually really like that moment too.
That bangle is made for something bigger than you. Don't be so selfish, Kamala.
Then right after that really cool moment in the kitchen, they go to the really big fight scene that takes place out in like a ballroom where the wedding was taking place. And then this is where all the villains take out their weird weapons, like the guy with the whip belt, her friend with like the keychain ball that he's swinging around, and like this girl has a necklace that has like the Percy Jackson knife where she clicks it and a knife comes out. It's a really weird thing that they're trying to do here, and I did not really like it at all. And then like the police show up, they arrest all the bad guys. They're actually arresting everyone they see, and Kamala's like right in front of them, but she's like able to sneak off like right in front of their eyes, go out like literally through a door right next to them, make all this noise. They don't hear any of it, but then she ends up getting free, and that's pretty much where the episode ends. And she finds out that these bad guys are now after her. And that was pretty much the gist of it, of the first 3 episodes. And I have to say, like, leading up to the 3rd episode, it was okay. It was like a coming of age, just like a girl gets these powers, trying to figure them out. But now that the 3rd episode is over, I have to say, like, it just got really weird with these villains, and I'm kind of interested to see where it's going to go. I kind of hope that they keep making these villains, I guess, more and more weird. Like, I don't know, make them like monsters that are using this human skin, and they have to like burst out of them to get back home. I don't know, just make it really weird. But I just hope that it doesn't get boring again, and I hope that these villains are kind of interesting to some extent. I just thought the whole thing was just really random, and it kind of caught my attention, I have to say, but I kind of wish that they stuck to like what they were building up. Like, I wish that they used the Edgar Wright editing mixed with like the Spider-Verse bubbles, but it is what it is, and it's not terrible so far. It definitely isn't great. I think Moon Knight is better than this, which I think is my favorite Marvel Disney Plus show so far, but again, this is made for kids. Like, this isn't made for someone like me, but it is what it is so far. It's not too bad, and I'm kind of excited to see what they do next. That so far is pretty much my thought process on the first 3 episodes of Ms. Marvel so far. I do still wish that they used her original power with like being stretchy and stuff, and not using this Green Lantern ring to create things just for it to like break. But it's still not bad, not great. Still interested to see where it'll go, but that's pretty much it, and I'll see you later.